Okay. People want to know when to replace radiator hoses. Well, good question. And hasn't that changed over all the last decades, the last 3 or 4 decades? It has changed massively. Okay, so there's a good type of rubber. I don't know what the hoses are made of. I've got no idea. But I know there's a good type of rubber. What's it called? The 4 letters. That's like PTFE or something like that, is it? Or there's some other lot of letters. There's good stuff and there's bad stuff. I don't know what they're made of. Someone asked in one of the comments something about blah blah blah, and they're made of this, and whatever those letters are, that is probably what it's made of. And Toyota do use that material for a lot of components. Is it PTFE? I don't know. I can't remember. There's all these letters, abbreviations, acronyms for all these things, and I can't remember what they all are. It's probably a recycling thing. It's like PETA or something like that. I'm getting it all mixed up, but it's some. If I heard it, I'd know it, but it's not at the top of my mind at the moment. So PTFE, maybe. Anyway, let me know in the comments if that's the stuff we're talking about. But when should you replace your radiator hoses? Well, let me put it simply for you. Okay, on the 120 Prado, I changed the radiator hoses at 300,000 kilometres when it was about probably 10 years old. And I'll tell you what, I analysed those hoses and I tried to rip them, tear them, crack them, and you know what? They're bloody awesome, and I would say never. Okay, so at this stage, with the Toyota, so every vehicle's different. I'll get to other makes and models in a minute, but every vehicle's different. That's what you got to remember. But with these Toyotas, and I'm going to say all the Toyotas, generally, the radiator hoses last longer than the radiator. Yep, that's right. And a lot of people knew that already. Now, there's nothing wrong with the radiators either, but in some hotter climates, the plastic tanks can deteriorate. In other makes and models of vehicles, the plastic tanks deteriorate anyway, a few years kind of thing, and they're going all white and brittle and things just fall to pieces and they break down all the time, right? This can happen on some of the Toyotas, depending on the conditions, the heat of summer, the northern areas of Australia, depends where in the world you're using your Prado, but where it's really hot and under those certain, maybe sitting in traffic where the heat just sits in the engine bay more, as opposed to highway driving like this where you've got a constant airflow. Highway driving is beautiful, right? Especially if you're not going too fast. But so older vehicles, we used to work on all the old Holdens and Fords in Australia, and I'm sure every other country had all these sort of older cars where the typical things that deteriorated were drive belts. They used to break all the time. That'd make cars unreliable, overheating, water pumps not pumping, battery lights coming, alternators not turning, all this sort of thing. And then of course there were more accessories, and they went to 2 belts and 3 belts, one for the aircon, one for the water pump, the alternator, another one for the power steering, and blah blah blah. You get my drift, right? But now we're down to serpentine belts. We're not talking about belts though. That'll be in another video, so you might want to subscribe to the bell and wait for that one. But radiator hoses with belts were really unreliable. Radiator hoses, we'd be changing radiator hose 20 years ago, back in the 90s, right? A bit over 20, in the 20 odd years ago, right? Let's say 25 years ago still. 25 years ago, we'd be changing radiator hoses at 80,000 Ks, right? So they might not necessarily be cracked, but they could be starting. What we looked at was, of course, the materials and the coolants and that, they weren't as good either. And depending what makes, lots of different makes and models we used to work on then, everything, right? So general statement, general information. You get some corrosion on a lot of vehicles, sometimes alloy housings, and it bulge because not enough coolant flushes and all that. So it'd bulge up behind the clamp at the back of the hose, and it's kind of like stretches the hose, and then the hose would go thin where the corrosion was on the alloy underneath the hose, and because it went thin and the heat, that's where they'd end up having some sort of little perforation, some sort of hole. It'd start off small and it could get bad pretty quickly because engine vibration, movement, heat and all that, and it just, it'd keep going, that sort of thing, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's one of those things back then that radiator hose, 80,000 Ks, 100, if you left it to 120, you'd have all these breakdowns Monday morning. So really the hoses need to be changed. But now with these Toyotas, the hoses are awesome quality. They have been for many years, I'd say 20 years or something like that. All the Camrys, all the everything, all the Australian, I don't see any problems with radiator hoses. So the question almost isn't valid, because changing radiator hoses isn't a thing anymore. It isn't a thing. So if you've got an old XF Falcon or EA or EB or those Fords or aftermarket hoses, maybe could give you some grief, but at the end of the day, if you've got genuine stuff and it's in the last, few years type thing, then you just don't need to change them with the Toyota stuff. Now, I've only been looking at the Toyotas for probably 10 years now, so I wouldn't have a bit of a clue what's going on with other makes and models. So please, everybody, all the other technicians, let us know in the comments for all the people, help some people out and let them know what are the makes and models that you need to be very careful of radiator hoses. And sometimes there's some small hidden hoses that are prone to, they get a lot of heat from exhaust manifolds and that, and they do get heat affected and they get little pinhole, and this is a number of vehicles this happens on, and we do see that as well, but I'm not going to start naming all the makes and models. There's a few come to mind. A lot of the smaller hoses, because smaller hoses are generally thinner as well, right? So at the end of the day, if that's what it is, but these Toyota hoses, they're just awesome hoses. They're just, like I said, 300,000 k's. I'll never change them again. So my hose, what have they done? 150,000 k's, whatever it is, not even. At the end of the day, just you got to monitor the hoses. So when you service the vehicle every 10,000 k's, it's one of the things you check. You visually check your squeeze. If you feel any lumps, if you feel any general squeezing around, a bit of a feel, it's a bit like a breast examination, right? Bit of a, what's that called? What do you call that one? Yeah, you got to check for lumps and whatever. No, serious. I mean, that's what it's kind of like that. You got to go around the hoses, give it a bit of a squeeze, rub your fingers along it, and you just sort of check for lumps in case it's like delaminating, or the layers are separating type thing. So keep an eye out for that. It's a real thing. I'm not joking around. I'm sort of joking around. I'm not joking around, but it's just what it is, right? It's like that, So anyway, check the hoses. If you see if you've got a poor condition cooling system, corrosion, as we already discussed, it's going to cause some problems maybe for you. Also, regular coolant changes are key. It does help look after the hoses. Exactly what I said, by stopping. Look, it's plastic tanks now, so you don't get that, but it's the alloy housings, and it's the quality of the alloy and the quality of the coolants, and are they getting changed properly? Is there coolant mixes going on? There's all this prevention by just following all these videos, all the guidelines, and not missing even one of them. Like I said, just one more piece of the million-piece jigsaw puzzle. Okay, and if I don't put a video out, just go and watch videos we've already got. There's hundreds of videos, thousands or something. There'll be thousands, there'll be tens of thousands, who knows? There'll be all these videos. Might start doing 10 videos a day. No, we won't do that to you. Let us know how many videos a day you want. What, one every 2 days? That'd be better, wouldn't it? We need to back it off a bit, change it up a bit. Anyway, what I'm going to try and do is do some shorter videos. How about that, right? You won't get as much information, but it only costs you a couple of minutes, 2 or 3, 4 minutes, because you like 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, don't you? Okay, you just won't get 10 minutes worth of information. Anyway, hoses, when do you change them? Never. Depends what make and model. That person that asked the question, yep, made a video for you if you like, but I can't remember what your make and model is. But I would say if you get to the point you've got to replace your radiator because it's, the plastics are, deteriorated, it's gone all white and brittle, just get new hoses then, because nice new hoses fit snug on nice new radiators. Radiators all goes hand in hand. So that's when. But generally, these days, I think with most makes and models, you're not going to find any problems with radiator hoses. New vehicles for a fair while now have been very reliable, as long as you avoid all those certain makes and models that we don't talk about, because we don't talk badly about. Generally made in Japan. Generally people can pick up the good brands. All good technicians know all the good brands and all the bad ones. You want to know the worst one? The worst is like those Range Rovers, Land Rovers, whatever, mate. They are the worst. Other European cars, they're just unreliable. You can't get parts. They're hard to work on. Equipment doesn't work to diagnose them. You got to, get all your updates, whatever. What a pain in the butt. Too much technology. Just stay away from those vehicles. Toyota, good, yeah. Subaru, pretty good, yeah. Mazda, yeah, not bad. What else do we say? Do we say Honda? Honda's not bad, but maybe they're sort of losing it a bit. One of the really, I don't like to say it, but because I don't like to go for these cheaper, inferior brands, but your Hyundais and Kias and stuff like that, they're actually pretty good for value for money. They really do tick the boxes. I would always stick with a Toyota if I couldn't afford it, a second-hand Toyota. But that's certainly better than a lot of these European cars and cars made in all these weird countries. Anyway, long story short, that's when to replace your radiator hoses. Never. or when you've got a problem with your radiator or something similar like that. Bada bing. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want. Catch you on the next video. See ya.